I'm
Yeah,
gonna
sorry
go.
I'm late.
No worries. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the meeting here. I'm now recording. I'm gonna do a roll call, even though I can see people. I just want to confirm. When you're not speaking, if you want to go ahead and mute yourself, that might be helpful, just so we don't have too much background noise. So I'm Stephanie. I'm the Secretary of State's designee. I'm the state archivist. Do we have Michael Crone? No. Do we have Liz Mira, formerly Craig? No, we do not. Emily, I think I saw you in there.
Emily Harris is here.
Hi.
Hi.
Um, we have Steve, just saw him. Do we have Les Seitz? We do not have Les right now. We'll see if he joins us later. We have Scott. We have Rob. Mark messaged me and said that he might be late or not attend at all. He's got some conflicting calls today. Do we have Sharon? Okay, we'll see if we get Sharon later. We've got Tony and we've got Ginger. Hello, Ginger. We've got Senator Thatcher. And Representative Power was going to try to make it. I'm not sure if she'll be able to make it today. So the first order of business is to approve the agenda. Can I get someone to move to approve the agenda?
I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll move.
Thank you, Tony. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Steve. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. So we'll go ahead and approve the agenda. So really our only main agenda item today is to review the applications for the advocate position. Hopefully you all received the application materials in advance of this meeting. If you did not, please let me know and I can send those to you. But I think everyone did. So just for those that have been asking, I have confirmed with Michael that we do need to send 3 names to the governor. We cannot send less than 3 names. That's what's required in statute. So that's what we'll be doing for this process. And as we all know, SB 1506 did not go through. So we are still following the process that we followed back in 2017. So the same process where we're going to be doing interviews, we're going to be vetting and passing along 3 names to the governor to select from to appoint for this position. So just a little note while I'm talking about the applications and the materials and all of that. I have some issues that I've been working through with DAS that have to do with, this is a public meeting, we're doing public interviews. It's kind of, a different unique situation than maybe DAS has been used to and many of us that work in government have been used to. So I did send out a non-disclosure agreement for folks to sign. Several of you signed that and sent that in order to be a panelist, and at least one person did not feel comfortable signing it, and expressed that he thought possibly there might be other panel members that did not feel comfortable signing the NDA, given the very public nature of this entire process. So what I have done to be as proactive as I can be, and just to educate myself, since it's kind of a complicated process, is I did ask DAS to reach out to DOJ to get clarification. Do I need to require that NDA be signed by each panel member in order for that panel member to participate? So I will let you all know. I've been reaching out to them pretty much every day trying to get updates. So I'll let you know once I hear back from them. And if any of you have questions about the NDA, you can let me know. Another question that I have into DAS that directly relates to kind of our conversation that we'll be having about the applicants is what information are we allowed to disclose publicly about these candidates? What information should be kept confidential if possible. I know it's a public process, it's kind of unique, but that's another question that I've sent over to DAS to get an official opinion or weighing in from DOJ of, let's say we do get a public records request for application materials. What are we allowed to disclose and what are we not allowed to disclose in order to protect that? It's a delicate balance between protecting the confidentiality of the recruitment process and of these applicants and the materials they submitted, but also making sure that the public is as informed as possible, because this is a position that is very relevant to a lot of our public stakeholders. So just so you know, those are two issues that I'm working through with DAS and DOJ, so that we're 100% prepared to respond to requests and to make sure that the panelists have all the information that they need to keep things confidential. So does anyone have any questions or comments about those two specific issues?
I'm afraid I haven't had a chance to read the NDA. I saw your email but didn't look closely. Could you just briefly explain what it commits us to doing and
Yeah.
I guess that's it.
Yeah, so essentially it's a boilerplate. It's DAS's essential NDA template. It's a little bit unique in that we aren't having super top secret interviews here. This isn't a typical recruitment process. So some of the language could maybe have been refined a little bit better, I think, and that's probably on me to try to make that more unique. But I think the main issue of the NDA that I thought was impactful and was something that we needed to do, which is why I sent it out to you all, is in the NDA, you are required to read through the list of names and disclose if you have a professional or personal relationship with one of the candidates that you believe makes you not a fair and balanced panelist. So that's something that, I've been a hiring manager for a few years now, and that is something that can come up if someone has a personal relationship outside of work with a candidate. That's something that we need to know in advance so that the recruitment process is 100% fair for all candidates, equitable for all candidates, and that there are no candidates getting preferential treatment by any panelists due to some sort of other relationship that might exist. So that was my main goal of having those NDAs completed, is just to make sure that all of our panelists are being fair and equitable to all candidates. But I understand one of the council members who was not comfortable signing it. That's something that I'm definitely taking into account, and so I will let you guys know if I have to require that or if I can waive that requirement this time around.
So this is Steve. I'm wondering, I mean, if that's the main goal, it seems like we could accomplish that by kind of somehow committing to conflict of interest declarations by council members. I mean, is there also a desire to keep, what are we trying to keep from disclosing? What specific parts of the process? Is it the names of the applicants who don't make the interview cut? Because the applicants who do make the interview cut will be interviewed in public. So
yeah.
What portion of the process are we concealing?
So from my experience as a hiring manager, that's all I can speak to, is what I wanted to prevent, and what I think DAS wants to prevent in terms of risk management is, not having a panelist understand that just because I've sent you full application materials with all of this, personal information that these applicants have submitted, doesn't mean that those documents in those forms are public records for disclosures in the form that I've sent them out to you. So the last thing I would want is for an applicant to provide all of this personally identifiable information, for me to email that out to you panelists and have someone disclose it in its original format, without getting a legal eye to it or an HR perspective before those records are disclosed. So that's kind of where I was coming from. And then I was going to say, when we went through this process in 2017, I think most panel members tried to stick to first names only when discussing the candidates. And I looked back at the meeting minutes, and we did not mention last names in the meeting minutes. We basically stated the 3 first names of the individuals that were being sent along to the governor's office and the 3 names of the individuals who were not going to be forward on. So I don't, listening back to the audio, I don't think we called out people by first and last name regularly through the process. So I don't think it was, I think it was as anonymous as it could be and confidential as it could be given the public nature of it. So that was another thing that I was kind of wanting to have folks keep in mind. Does that answer?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, uh, it seems to me like that process worked well, and they are public records,
Yeah,
by definition. Whether they're disclosable or not is to be decided by the custodian,
right.
and the PII can be redacted, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
And in terms of us also having copies of it, I mean, it seems like we can. I don't know. It seems like maybe there's a more collegial way to deal with it and not a binding legal format, because it does make me a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, and that's good feedback, Steve. I just internally here at Secretary of State's office, I haven't ever done a recruitment without requiring staff to sign one of these types of agreements. It's very typical practice. So I definitely understand, DAS, that's their perspective too. They don't really allow the recruitment process to go forward without it. But given the public nature of the situation, I really am hoping to hear back from them soon and be able to give further guidance on that. Does anyone else have any other comments about those two items?
Yeah, it's Emily Harris. I mean, I have a question. How can we have a conversation? I understand, like, first names and I understand that not like sharing resume details that don't come up in discussion or et cetera. And I'm comfortable with that, but how do we have a discussion and also keep all information confidential?
We can't. Yeah, we won't be
So
able to do that.
So we can't do this until DAS comes back to you?
Um,
I mean, how are we going to say, oh, I think X
yeah.
person is worth interviewing because of X, Y, and Z, and I think, A person, could be interesting, except for here are some concerns. I mean, how do we even do that?
Yeah, I'm basically having to make the call of waiving that requirement for this meeting, knowing, yeah, we're basically taking on that risk at this point
I have a
because
question
not
too.
all panelists submitted their document. Yes, Tony?
So I, um, yeah, I'm okay with whatever needs to be signed. But I also totally understand the nature of the background. I guess, like, I'm wondering if there's a way. One, I'm assuming that candidates already know that the public nature of this job starts from day one, including the application part, is probably fair game. But then two, like, I don't want to see social security numbers or anything like that.
Exactly.
I'm like, that's y'all's role. So, like, I'm assuming they're, like, letters, their cover letter and their and their resumes and writing samples won't have that. Like, just design one that doesn't have your home address. I'm not trying to be this, like that information will be in the proper paperwork, but be prepared to that's part of the application process too, is being aware of what your public output's going to be, for lack of a better word. So those are my 2 cents. I'll get your form signed. I apologize for not doing it sooner.
Oh, no, that's fine. And yeah, that's exactly what my thoughts were, Tony, is I want to know exactly from DOJ what needs to be redacted before we release anything if we get a request. And last time during this process, we never posted any application materials online, and we did not have any requests for those materials. But I'm not so naive to think that we may not get a request like that this time around. So I just want to be super prepared for that in advance. And you're right, there are some pieces that probably don't have to have anything redacted, but I don't want to have to make that call personally. I want our legal counsel people to make that call for me. Steve, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I was just going to say to Emily's concern, I think, we can try to use our discretion in terms of, rather than saying, I don't like that so-and-so went to, Washington State. We can say, I'm not sure about this person's educational background, but Susie's educational background, or,
Yeah.
and we can try our best.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, we do our best, Emily. It worked out pretty well last time, so yeah, honestly that's all we can do. So I'm gonna move along to the next thing, which is for us to review the applications. I would like to do kind of a roll call and let each person share their thoughts about the scoring spreadsheet, and any other opinions they might have about the application materials. I will go ahead and start with what my first thought was from the materials, and how I scored and why I chose the scoring method that I did. And then I'm going to call on people and do it that way, so that we're not all talking over each other, because it can get pretty crazy with this many people on a remote call. So my first thoughts out of the gate were that we had 2 candidates that met the minimum qualifications from where I'm sitting. We had 3 that possibly could have met the minimum qualifications if there had been adjustments to a couple of different categories. I guess I would say my biggest hang up for not saying that we have more than 2 qualified candidates would be that 2 of the candidates that were kind of on the fence for me did not identify themselves as having any familiarity with public records laws, which is a huge stumbling block for me. I personally do not feel comfortable passing a name along to the governor that does not claim to have any familiarity even with public records laws. So I that would make me uncomfortable. So I see 2 strong candidates, and that's just how I feel based on how I scored and the different application materials. So I'm going to move down the list. I have Emily next. Emily, will you please share your thoughts with the group?
About well, I thought that I'm just trying to follow your lead here.
Yeah.
There was one person I wasn't sure. It's number 13 on your spreadsheet. It says that the highest degree obtained was none, but I think that's a mistake. Sorry, I read all these things earlier today. So I actually thought that person possibly could have some relevant experience. And then the 3 that are that you identified as possibly meeting the minimal qualifications. I thought a couple of those were strong enough to look at a little more closely.
Okay. Okay, I will take a look at that, number 13.
I mean, that could be more specific if you want. I'm just not totally clear.
Yeah, it's fine. What
you want, what is helpful.
Okay. Steve, do you want to go next? And then Emily, if you have other thoughts, you can weigh in. Sorry to put you on the spot first. I know you didn't participate last time. So
yeah, that's cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
So Steve?
Yeah, you want my thoughts on the scoring sheet?
Yeah, on the scoring sheet, and just your conclusions of after looking through the materials.
Yeah. So I guess first I have some questions on the scoring sheet. The 3rd candidate that you're showing is, gosh, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble calling up the right sheet. I have too many tabs open. The 3rd candidate, could you clarify what that person's public records experience was? Because I didn't see that.
All I used to score that was they were given questions when they filled out their forms in Workday in the recruitment application, and basically they had to say yes or no to do they have familiarity with public records laws, and that 3rd person said yes. So I gave her points for that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the nature of her work did not seem to involve that, but yeah. I mean, maybe as a requester, but it just wasn't evident.
Yeah, that's a good
And
point. And that's something that we maybe would want to target if we did give her an interview, is we'd want to know more about that. You know, you've said that you have this experience. Please tell us what that experience looks like. Something like that. So
and are you not counting sorry, I'm trying to do this without using names.
okay, you can use names, honestly, it's fine.
Are you not counting Christina is disqualified for lack of public records experience? Is
Yes,
that
and
right?
I also felt a little bit uncomfortable with less than 1 year of management experience because this person is going to be leading basically an independent state agency. So that made me feel
Yeah,
a little bit uncomfortable.
yeah. Um, well, my overall impression, candidate number, the third candidate on your list, I'm not at all clear that that person actually would be able to sit for the Oregon bar,
Okay.
even though it's possible that she received a doctoral degree in law. I mean, it looks like she did based on her resume. I was really intrigued by her because the other folks, when they listed advocacy experience, at least of your qualified candidates, I think they were sort of treating, being a lawyer in the generic sense of being an advocate, and that all lawyers are advocates for their clients. But I didn't, like in her case, she was actually, she worked with as a victims advocate, and worked with vulnerable populations. So I definitely liked her from that standpoint. But I'm just not convinced that she actually could qualify. I think number two, Michael. Well, let me just start back up. So I think potentially we have three people who meet the minimum requirements I mean, just as lawyers. And that would be candidate number one, row number two in your spreadsheet, row number four, and I'm sorry, row number two, row number three, and row number five.
Mm-hmm.
Row number six, okay, that person, also a lawyer, not nearly enough experience and no public records experience. So I kind of was confining my thoughts to Todd, Michael, and Christina.
Okay.
And Christina, yes, not a lot of public records experience. So that definitely a one strike against her. I mean, to be honest, I think my first impression is I think Todd stands out quite far ahead of these other two. And has some natural advantages in experience with public records law. But I think conceivably I'd want to, well, I mean, we need to find three names. So I would definitely want to hear from Christina and Michael and understand, about their interest in the job and what their appetite and excitement is about public records law. Even if Christina doesn't know it, she's been an attorney for a long time and, could learn it. But I'd like to understand more about, how she feels about the issue and what kind of advocate she would be.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. That's very helpful. Can we go to Scott now? Scott, can you share your thoughts, please?
Sure. I guess I wouldn't mind some clarification for Oksana on her eligibility for the state bar, but not having a writing sample provided is a challenge for me. I think if we're looking at three, I think lines 2, 3, and 5 would be my choice as well.
Okay.
If we want to do 4, I think line 6, maybe there's an opportunity, but from the list, I think I agree with Steve.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Rob, are you comfortable sharing your thoughts next, please?
I am, sure, and I'll keep it short. I basically agree with everything that folks have said before. But what I guess I'm concerned with is we still have a statutory obligation to deliver 3 names to the governor. And so we probably ought to interview at least 3. And I'm thinking we ought to interview all the 5 you have lit up in green and yellow. I agree with the same order that we've heard before. 2 and 3 clearly need to be interviewed. I'd go next to 5 and then next to 6 and then next to 4. But I think we ought to interview 5 people, whittle it down to 3, and give those 3 names to the governor. So that's my quick take.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Next, Tony, please share.
Yeah, no broken record here. I'm with Rob. Like hearing the great input everyone just gave, I agree with Steve in terms of the I guess just like the in the nature of the experience. But I think that I'm most interested in just full disclosure, because of extenuating circumstances, I haven't been able to do a deep dive into the candidates, but in my cursory review today, I feel like giving them all a chance, as long as they have the opportunity and the avenue or whatever to get the necessary licensing or get well with the state bar, the legal processes and loopholes. I would love to hear from all the candidates, especially given the changing culture in training, and like what are their thoughts on public trainings and moving forward now that you can't have something bigger. So like I think that might be more than what the law is requiring us for the duty of this position, but for the long-term success, I think the candidate needs to I would like to hear a little bit more, and on that. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Thank you, Tony. Ginger, any thoughts to share?
I agree with Rob's analysis that it would be good to interview more people as opposed to less. You never know what might come out in the interviews as far as relevant experience, things that didn't necessarily make it into other documentation. So I think it would be worthwhile to spend the time interviewing all of the candidates, the 5 that Rob had talked about.
Okay. Senator Thatcher, do you have any thoughts to share on this?
Unmute.
Oh, sorry.
Am I unmuted now? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I agree that interviewing more is better. We know we have to end up with 3 to refer to the governor. So, 5 is probably a good number.
Okay.
And I like the list that's been arrived at so far.
Great. So I guess we are leaning, I see 4 people have weighed in and said that they'd like to interview all 5, and Steve and Scott were leaning towards interviewing Todd, Michael, and Christina. Steve or Scott, are you comfortable interviewing all 5?
Yeah, I wonder with Oksana whether the basic question of whether she could become a licensed attorney in Oregon could be answered with a simple email, and then because if that's not possible, then there's no sense in scheduling an interview.
Those that said they wanted to interview all 5, does it make sense to you to interview Oksana if she is not able to become a member of the state bar?
That's a requirement of the job.
Where I don't think that would make sense because it is a requirement.
Okay.
Yeah. I think as long as she says she has the ability to have reciprocity, or she's scheduled for the bar, but I guess she's not scheduled for the bar, one of those 2. But yeah, I agree with what Ginger just said. If she can't get bar membership in the foreseeable future, it would just waste her time and our time because that's a statutory requirement.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I guess I will ask.
I think
Oh.
I think Scott had something he wanted to
Oh,
say too.
Scott, please go ahead.
I'm fine with interviewing all 5 with the caveat on Oksana. Or am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I think we have kind of a conclusion here. I was prepared. I didn't know honestly what to expect from folks, so I was preparing many different options for a vote. I didn't know if people would want to reopen the recruitment, extend the window for a few weeks. I have not heard one person suggest that, so I just want to throw that out there. Is anyone interested or have thought about wanting to reopen it for a few weeks and attempt to advertise a little bit more widely? Or is that something that only occurred to me and everyone would like to just stick with this 5 candidates and with the caveat about Oksana? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is Emily Harris. No, that definitely crossed my mind. I was curious how many candidates that were qualified, applied last time. I mean, this hit at a very bad time for anybody getting anybody's attention, just in terms of with all the coronavirus everything's. So it did cross my mind, but I guess the first thing I wondered was, did we get more applicants last time? Is this, that's the only sort of yardstick I guess I would think we'd have to judge whether this was, comparable to, just any sort of comparison. Do you know the answer to that, Stephanie?
Yeah, I think we had about a dozen and we whittled it down to 6. So 6 people got interviews. And from what I remember, I wasn't on the council at the time, but I was prepping all the materials. From what I remember, they were, it was a higher bar of qualifications, honestly, that we were looking at. Does anyone
It
else?
was 12
This is
people that
Ginger.
were qualified?
Yes. Yeah, that were qualified.
Yeah, this is Ginger. I recall last time, the first time the announcement went out, it had, I think, October 1st deadline. And I looked at it and I said, I'm not going to apply for that because at the time it said you had to be barred in Oregon. And I guess that they hadn't received enough qualified candidates, so they re-announced it and pushed the deadline back, I think, another 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I applied. So, I mean, I actually think it might be a good idea to re-announce it, especially given everything that's going on right now. It might be good to see if we can get at least a few more candidates. Because, it sounds like we only have 2 really qualified candidates. I mean, it would be wonderful if we could get at least a few more.
Yeah, Stephanie, thank you for bringing up that question. I agree 100%. I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing that up. I mean, yeah, I just want to echo that.
This is Steve. I will say, last time we had considerable debate just to get it down to 6 to interview, and then there was a lot of deliberation over narrowing that down to 3, because we had a lot of strong candidates, as I recall, and so I would say it was definitely a richer pool last time. I mean, granted, we have recent history that's kind of stalking us, so I don't know whether it will produce a different outcome if we give it a couple more weeks, but I suppose it can't hurt.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts about extending the recruitment?
This is Rob. I'd just say ditto to what Steve said. Was our recruitment open-ended, or did it have a hard date for applying by?
Yeah, the recruitment was open from March 9th to March 31st.
Oh, wow.
And that was kind of a tough time, I think, for people.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people were distracted by that. Were distracted by, I was wondering if there might have been like a chilling effect on people wanting to leave current jobs, just for stability's sake. I really have no idea. With the bill not passing, I don't know how many people were keeping a half an eye on that to figure out if they wanted to apply. So we have not voted yet on moving to interview all 5. I'll just run through what my kind of backup plan was if you all had wanted to vote to extend, I was going to suggest extending the recruitment window till Sunday, May 3rd, and speak with DAS about widening our advertising. I don't think we marketed this that well the first time. I don't know how it was marketed, but that might be something that I would ask reporters on the council to, you know, if there are other outlets that you didn't reach out to, there might be more folks interested. We do have kind of a high unemployment rate all of a sudden in this country. That might be a factor. I really have no idea. And then I was gonna suggest that we meet again on May 13th to review applicants. And then I was gonna suggest that we meet May 27th to do the interviews. But I mean, it's a gamble. I don't know if we'd get more people. So I guess my question to you all is, what do you have additional thoughts on that before we bring 2 votes up?
Yeah, it's Emily
This is
Harris.
Ginger. I
Why
have a
May
few.
3rd? I thought that, I mean, that looks like a very short window. I'm wondering, I mean, I think it'd be a good idea to reopen it personally, but maybe till May 10th or something, because
Okay.
getting advertising out, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Okay.
This
Okay.
is Ginger. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to reopen it until May 10th or even May 15th, like just reopen it for a month.
Okay.
I don't think that we have a high risk of losing any of the folks that already applied, and we can just roll those applications in.
Yeah.
But I do think, you know, March was a really crazy month, and I apologize because I fell down on the job. I was going to advertise this versus over NFOIC and some of the other listservs, and, you know, I'm at FEMA, and I've just been working crazy hours for the last month, so I didn't have a chance to do that, so I apologize for that. But I mean, it would be good to have an opportunity to re-advertise this to a wider audience and see if we can get some more applicants.
Okay. What do other folks think? Anyone else have thoughts?
This is Rob. I'm in agreement with both Emily and Ginger. I'd extend it out a month and I also don't see a huge risk of losing the applicants we have. So, and I think it'd be worth doing now that we've got new circumstances.
Okay.
This is Steve. I guess I'm in agreement. I wonder whether it makes sense. I mean, I guess potentially these candidates are listening into this call, but I wonder if there's anything we can communicate to them just in terms of the people who we do think, at least at the moment, given the current pool, that we have some level of interest.
Yeah, so I've already talked to DAS about that because the analyst that I'm working with was concerned about the low number of applicants. And she said to me, if the council decides to reopen this recruitment, she would personally be reaching out to each candidate and let them know that their application materials and everything, the writing sample, will roll over, and that the council will be in touch with them soon, or DAS HR will be in touch with them soon to let them know what the plan is. So I would be sending all of this information to her. She would reach out personally to each one, explain the situation, and let them know that they do not need to resubmit anything, and let them know what our new dates are going to be for reviewing applications and for interviews. So that we definitely thought about that.
We could, that person could, I mean, I don't know if it goes without saying, but could explain that because it landed in March, everything was so distracted. Yeah. I mean, I think Steve's point is right. You know, we want to make sure that people who did already apply don't view this as a wholesale, you know, wholesale restarting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't believe that they would. I don't believe that they would. I think we would explain it well enough. Yeah.
That would include checking with the candidate on line 4 about whether that person can in fact pass the bar in Oregon.
Yes, exactly. I would work that in as well to my conversation with the DAS analyst. So that is definitely on my to-do list. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move or ask someone to move for a vote. We are voting to extend the recruitment window to Friday, May 15th. And let's see. Yes, Friday, May 15th. So would someone please move for that?
This is Rob Bovet. I'll make that motion.
It's Emily, I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor of reopening the recruitment until May 15th, please say aye.
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 Do I have any opposed to that? No. Okay, great. I will do that. I will keep you all posted. And while I have everyone on, can I have a motion to meet again on May 27th to review the applications? That is a Wednesday. Does May 27th work for people? Do you have a different day that you'd like?
I'm looking right now.
May 27th. Who knows what's going to be happening?
I know. We can try, right?
It's a Wednesday, if that helps anybody.
Yeah.
Works for me.
And it would be
Works for me.
1:30.
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
This is Scott. I have an all-day meeting on the 27th
Okay.
of May.
What about the 28th? Does the Thursday the 28th work for people?
Works for me, Emily.
Okay.
That works.
Works for me.
I think that's probably good on my end too. I will do a caveat for the end of May. I think it's highly unlikely we're going to have a special session start in late May, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have a special session in June. But if they start the special session in late May, I think all bets are off for at least probably 4 or 5 of us.
Okay. I will keep that in mind. Can someone please move to meet May 28th at 1:30?
I would.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So we will be meeting May 28th at 1:30 virtually. I will send out the invites for that. So then that would put us at interviews. I am proposing Wednesday, June 10th.
I have a question.
Yes, Tony.
The website shows that there's a meeting April 29th.
Yes, I will talk about that.
Okay, sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
That's okay.
Sorry.
No worries. So does Wednesday, June 10th work for people to have our interviews?
I'll give you the same caveat I gave you on the last one, Stephanie.
Okay.
That date is more likely to be potentially implicated by a special session, but who the heck knows?
Who the heck knows? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, Rob, we will roll with that if we need to, I think.
Yeah.
I don't want to delay it.
And for
Yeah,
me, for ease of me, that far ahead, any day of the week is fine. I'll just put it on my calendar and work around it.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. So will someone please move to meet June 10th, and that will be an 8:30 to 4:30 day long holding, just in case we need the whole day.
This is Rob again. I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed to June 10th for interviews? None. Okay, we will be doing interviews June 10th all day long. Lucky us. Okay, so I do have a little bit of new business to share, and this is where April 29th comes in. So I know that we had held April 29th in order to hold our interviews. So I know many of you already have that day held. Since we will not be holding interviews that day, I was going to propose that we keep our meeting but meet from 1:30 to 3:30, and I wanted to discuss a legislative concept that has been proposed with a few modifications to SB 1506 that has been proposed by Todd Albert. I will be circulating his proposal. Basically, as soon as our meeting's over, I'll send that out to all of you to review. I would like to talk about the legislative concept and what our plans are for the long session. I would like to discuss our options for who will carry the legislative concept into in the long session. We have a couple of options. There's a DAS process that we have submitted a placeholder just in case we need it. So thank you to Todd Albert for having those conversations with DAS and getting that placeholder bill in there for us. There is the avenue of Secretary of State's office if we needed to do it that way. I would say my personal opinion would be that our lovely legislative members on this council would, one or both would agree to introduce that in the long session. So I know we have Senator Thatcher on the phone. I don't think Representative Power has joined us, but Senator Thatcher, do you have thoughts on that?
I'd be happy to do that, and I'm sure that we can put together the same team we had last time in requesting the bill. So I'm not speaking for Representative Powers, but I'm sure she would be willing. I mean, I would think that she would be willing as well to move and request a bill together. That's fine.
Great,
That's a
thank
good
you
idea.
so much. That's awesome news.
This is Ginger. Just for clarification, I'm sorry. What is the legislative proposal? I don't think I've seen it.
I have not sent it out to anyone. I just received it from Todd. Basically it's taking SB 1506 and having a couple of small tweaks that he felt would help clarify even more based on our meetings with legislators. There was still some confusion about budget, about where it's housed, about the line of succession if the office is vacant. So instead of trying to explain, I think what I'd like to do is send it out to everyone and have Todd present to us on April 29th and walk everyone through his ideas. This is not something that I'm saying the council has to adopt. I mean, we could go with the exact language that we approved for SB 1506. I'm fully supportive of that motion, but I'd like to hear Todd out and listen to some of his suggestions. So that's kind of what I was thinking. If folks are still willing to meet on April 29th to have that conversation as far enough in advance as we can, just so that we're spending the time that we need. Does anyone have thoughts on that?
I have a question. It's Emily. I know I asked you this in email, Stephanie, but I'm just going to ask it again, especially since Senator Thatcher's on the line. I mean, there's no chance we could get something else in the short session. It's all COVID money, right? There's nothing. There's no, because this got so close last time. I'm just curious if there's any way, and I don't know, some of the people who work lobbying the legislature professionally, is there any way to get this into the short session?
So this is Rob, and well, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, Rob.
So that was going to be my question as well, because I'm not convinced that we won't get 1506 or something like it stuffed into an omnibus bill in a special session in June, potentially. It just depends on, this is my take, just my take. It just depends on how far beyond pure COVID-19 issues legislative leadership wants to go and stray in a special session in June. They may very well be willing to cover some of the things that are not huge policy lifts, kind of things like this. So I wouldn't give up on it quite yet, but we'll probably know more about the parameters of the special session as we get closer to it. That's just my quick take.
Senator Thatcher, did you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a possibility, but there's also the issue of opening it up to non-COVID things, kind of opens it up to everything else. And I think there's some nervousness about that among some of my colleagues.
Yeah. Emily, I had heard no. The chances were very, very slim from, our different contacts at the Capitol, but I've been surprised before, so I don't know. I can talk to the Secretary of State's legislative director about that and see what she's been hearing and what our options might be. But yeah, I'll keep you guys posted if I hear anything about that. But otherwise, go ahead.
I have a question.
Stephanie, if I could just clarify real quick.
Yeah, Rob.
I'm not suggesting it's a high likelihood that we could get anything in June. I'm just not willing to give up on it quite yet because I don't know the parameters. But I would also agree that at this time, if I were a betting man, I would agree that it's highly unlikely we get something like that in June.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Tony, did you have something to say?
Yeah, a question and I guess a statement. I guess was wondering the same thing about the short session. I don't want to hinder anything to do with the funding for COVID. I was wondering about the April 29th. So this is an opportunity, and for me, what's still lingering over the cloud that kind of weighs on me is the independence nature of this position, and Todd's experience now in the short session. I'm wondering if he will also kind of talk about his experience lobbying for our cause, our bills, and how that compares to Ginger's, and if the council, I don't know, like the public nature of it, like this is kind of weird talking about it and lobbying stuff, but like it's the nature of our council. But I'd like to know in a public manner, like what challenges he faced politically, up against all the other interests that are out there. So would that be something that he can cover also on the 29th?
I can definitely ask him. Yeah, I'll ask him to address that.
All right, thanks.
I think it just fell off the table because, like a lot of things, right? I mean,
Yeah, it
there's
got
a whole lot
very
of
close.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was going to pass. It was just that, there was the walkout and then things started up again too late for it to possibly get
For
through. But I mean, we had every
Sure.
indication that it was going to pass had things just sort of continued as they were going.
Absolutely, and it could be a great experience. I'm just kind of curious. This is my only opportunity to really kind of talk with the whole group without fear of violating some sort of email rule or open record stuff. So like I just wanted to kind of present that kind of desire to know how what it's like, being one person, advocating and with the support, of course, of grateful support of the elected representatives on this council. But I'm just curious, kind of go like a game tape review of now we've got two people that have gone through this. So I'd like to hear that perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll talk to Todd about that. So I guess, can I get a motion to, I don't know if I need a motion since we're already meeting on April 29th, but I guess to modify the topic from interviews to discussing the legislative concept and hearing from Todd and planning that out. So does someone want to move to still meet on April 29th at 1:30?
I'm sorry. Oh,
Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say, before we move to a motion, I was just wondering if I could ask a question. Hopefully, it's on topic, Stephanie.
Sure.
I'm wondering whether Todd can also address on the 29th the issue. I mean, as long as we're talking about legislative concepts potentially for 2021, I'd be interested in his thoughts on bringing back the other bill of ours that didn't pass a session ago, the data gathering bill for state agencies, and whether that should be an additional thing on the, an additional request to DAS. And I guess while we're on the topic of 2021 legislative concepts, I'd be interested now, or I guess on the 29th, since everybody's here, I was hoping to sort of get people's thoughts on, whether the subcommittees that we've discussed are basically, is there any bandwidth still for proceeding with that, or is that, is everybody feeling too overwhelmed?
Anyone want to take that question?
I've certainly thought about that. Thanks for bringing that up,
Ginger,
Steve.
do you all mind if I hop off the call now, because I don't think I'm relevant to the rest of this?
Oh, sure. No problem, Ginger. Thank you so much for calling in.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Ginger.
All right.
Bye,
Thank you all
Ginger.
very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Steve, were you? No. Tony? Someone was.
Yeah, I was just gonna say thanks for bringing that up. I was curious about committee stuff too. I feel like I have some free time more in the coming months. So if there's anything I can do to help with the council, in addition to the public education committee, which I haven't really done much, I'd be game to set something up if there's interest.
Anyone else? Subcommittees?
Yeah, I have a little time. It's a busy time, but it's always a busy time in my work. So I think it would be great to try to start to move forward on them. These things take so much time.
Yeah. The challenge, I guess, that I see would be they need to be public meetings. So
Right.
you guys have to figure out if I'm not on the subcommittee and able to provide that go-to meeting information, please let me know if you're meeting, and I can create a meeting for you and try to make myself available to start that meeting for you and record that meeting for you, even if I'm not part of that subcommittee. So unfortunately, I guess you're all limited by my schedule now.
What's the requirement for notification, Stephanie? Like, is it a week before a public meeting?
It's a reasonable amount of time, I think, is the language. Rob, do you know the exact language?
24 hours, but
24
generally a week is what most people try to do.
Question. Just out of curiosity, just Sunshine Week, how did that go? Is there a need for more public education or an emphasis or anything for, a need for that one subcommittee to meet that would help make my decisions?
Yeah, that might be a question that I talked to Todd Albert about. I know he was leading the effort on that. Unfortunately, his panel that he had organized had to be canceled because it was right in the heart of everything. I think like the day before state government closed down pretty much. So I'm not sure how that went for him. I think that he still gave out awards to people, but yeah, that's something that I can ask him to address on the 29th if you'd like.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I'm happy to help however I can. I can email him too. I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay. Well, so Steve, what I can do is send out a reminder list of who the subcommittees currently are, and then folks can try to figure out if they can, meet, and please do loop me in if you're planning to meet, so that I can advertise that, record it, provide the recording later. So they're all kind of mini PRAC meetings as far as public records and meetings go. So we just have to kind of do the same thing.
Stephanie, does every one of those committees have at least one identified chair?
Yes.
And you and I had discussed for data being co-chairs.
Yeah.
I know Ginger had proposed that all the committees have, but it might be a good idea to have co-chairs, one from requester and one from government. I don't know maybe that's individual chairs can make that outreach, but
yeah, I think that's a good idea, Steve. I think if, I'll send out the list if you're currently a chair and you would feel more comfortable having a co-chair, then please identify someone from the committee to be a co-chair with you. And I don't want to have to assign that. That feels a little weird to me, but if you're having trouble finding a co-chair, let me know. I'm sure we can ask people and get some volunteers there. So. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Any other thoughts on subcommittees? No. Okay, so can we move to meet on April 29th from 1:30 to 3:30 to discuss legislative concept and get a general debrief from Todd Albert, who will hopefully address his experience lobbying for the bill, address the concept of bringing back that other bill that you all tried to move through in the previous session, and then hopefully he can address his experience with Sunshine Week through the pandemic. So if we can move for that.
So this is Rob Bovet. I'd make that motion. I do have something I want to say before we adjourn that I just remembered, but I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Rob.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor of meeting on April 29th?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, great. We will be meeting virtually again on April 29th. Rob, what did you have to say?
Virtual meetings just reminded me that later this afternoon, the governor is likely going to issue an executive order relating to mostly public meetings, essentially relief for local government entities. We've asked her to allow us essentially to do a whole lot more meetings and hearings like we're doing this right now so we can keep social distancing up. I suspect she's going to issue that later today, and I'd like to send that off to Stephanie so she can shoot it out to everybody. I know public meetings is not necessarily our purview, but it's all tied in and kind of relevant. I did work with Nick on certain aspects of that draft language when we were talking about legislation. I just thought I'd flag that for everybody.
Thank you, Rob. All right, do we have any other new business? Any other topics folks were hoping to address today? Nope.
Thanks for all your work.
Okay,
I have one quick question.
sure.
It's Emily. The link for the new job, I mean, not for the new job, the link for the reopening of the position, when will that be available to share?
I don't know until I talk to DAS, hopefully later this week, but I will email my contact there right after this meeting, and I will absolutely send it to you as soon as I get it.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
And we'll get it up on the website and all that. Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting today?
So moved.
Second.
Or second.
All in favor of adjourning today?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. All right, hearing none, I'm officially adjourning the Public Records Advisory Council meeting on April 15th. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.